Let's begin. Good morning. Good morning, Sarah. Oh, thanks, guys. That was really sweet. Did you happen to notice that your syllabus and all that stuff was posted on Canvas? Yes? Yes? Excellent. If you don't have Canvas notifications set up, please make sure that you do that. I do post things on there. I don't do it. Usually if I post something on Canvas, I'll also send an email or I'll send a text, especially if it's something short notice, but I make no guarantees on that, so that is why I'm letting you know. Turn on your notifications. There'll definitely be things coming your way there. Yes. So today we are going to talk very specifically about what is a material. Understanding what is a material is the foundation for being able to actually use it in any other kind of application. You'll notice that we've got, well, let me back up a little bit. There's this kind of artificial but still kind of useful division of disciplines in art between what's usually referred to as craft and what's referred to as fine art. Have you guys noticed that at all, some of you? What constitutes a craft discipline? Well, that's more of a question. What are the craft disciplines, typically speaking? Wood is obviously one of them.
Ceramics.
Ceramics, sure.
Metalworking.
Say that again?
Metalworking.
Yep, hang on. Wood. Ceramics, metals, not meals. I almost wrote meals. There's two more.
Fabrics.
Can you make it a bigger umbrella?
The first one I came on was quilting.
Nah. So fabrics would fall under what, do you think? Fibers. Very good. And there's one more. We'll come back to it. What would be a fine art discipline, not quilting? Anybody? Think about what the other majors are within, or concentrations within the art department. Anybody? Come on, Art Ed. You got this. Painting? Who said painting? Okay, good. 10 points for who said painting. Painting. Printmaking, sculpture, drawing, photo. There's probably others in there too. Digital media tends to fall in there as well. The remaining craft discipline is glassworking. Glass. Wood, ceramics, metals, fibers, glass. Painting, printmaking, sculpture, drawing, photo, digital. Can anybody tell me what the difference is between these two things? If you really had to look at them and understand them, what's the difference? Anybody? Very good. As opposed to? Yeah, you're halfway there. That's good. This is all predicated by material, and this is all predicated by process, if that makes sense. Material. Process. Now, it doesn't necessarily look that way on the surface, but you cannot get around the wood part of woodworking. You can get around the paint part of painting. You can do painting methods with other materials. Make sense? Sculpture doesn't mean a specific material that you're working with. It's referring to an end product, right? Same with printmaking, same thing with photo. I mean, photo can be digitally based, it can be black and white, it can be large format, it could be pinhole, it could be daguerreotype. Do you see what I'm saying? So this is more about the processes that are involved in terms of making your end product, as opposed to the materials that are involved in making your end product. So this is kind of it's kind of an artificial division, because the end products themselves have a similar effect culturally and kind of psychologically. But for the sake of understanding how we approach the disciplines, this is really important to know. We are talking about material and materiality when we're talking about any of these things, right? Process. So that's frequently why you see things divided that way. Beyond that too, all of these have a really long history within the realm of the practical, right? Craft disciplines tend to be things that are very useful. Glass blowing, you can make something from it that you can use to hold water. Fibers, we're talking about everything that we wear, metals, tools and utensils, ceramics, same thing, pottery kind of things, wood, all the furniture that you use, the structures that you sit in. These have a tendency to be thought of as luxuries, much more so than practical things. That's another one of those kind of artificial distinctions, but it's worth understanding as well. They have different histories, but they're not really, but they're brothers. They're on par with one another. Any questions about that? Kind of practical approach to doing what we're doing? Cool. All right, I'm going to erase this half of the board. So like I said, in understanding this discipline, it's important to know that the materiality is the thing. I like wood in particular because it is extremely close to the source. If you look at all of these other disciplines, glass has to go through an enormous amount of refinement to become usable, right? It's sand, essentially, right? Silica gets melted down with, all sorts of other stuff, has to be taken to a really high temperature, and then it can be manipulated and cooled in a controlled way to become something usable, But that's a pretty intense material shift from its source to its end product, right? Same thing with metals, especially. Of course, with metals, you've got two different kind of branches of metalworking. You've got ironworking or ferrous metals, usually referred to as blacksmithing, right? Blacksmithing usually is in reference to anything that's iron-based. Whether or not you're actually forging things out or not, or if you're just welding things together, it's not blacksmithing then, but the ironworking is one category, and then there's all the non-ferrous or precious metals, gold, silver, copper, etc. So frequently they're referred to as tiny shiny and like big and heavy. What kind of metals worker are you? Oh, tiny shiny. Okay. Or jewelry metals. Blacksmithing, we'll call it jewelry metals. This is the kind of metalworking that gets taught at the end of the hall by Jeannie Beaver. She teaches all of that basic, and actually not so basic, metal stuff. But if you think about it, in terms of the material, it has to get mined out of the earth and then smelted down to become something usable, and then usually rolled out into sheet or wire. It's not very, very close to what it was when it came out of the earth, right? There's a refinement process. Ceramics is a lot closer. You've got mud that you're taking out of the ground, but even then, you are still refining it, manipulating that material, and then putting it through another process by firing it, taking it up to really, really high heat to take all the moisture out of it and essentially turn it into what works like stone, right? Any glaze that goes over the top of that has to be applied and heat applied again. So you take something that started as extremely plastic and malleable, put it through this process and turn it into something permanent, essentially. Ceramics, once it's been fired, that shit is permanent. That's why we're finding it still, you know, in grave sites and things along riverbanks that erode. You know, it's a really pretty permanent thing. Well, ceramics too is, of course, the umbrella term as opposed to pottery. A lot of people are like, oh yeah, pottery. Pottery literally is in reference to pots, right? Or servingware, that kind of a thing. So ceramics or clay is the umbrella term that we talk about with that one. Fibers, depending on what the fiber is, it can go through a lot of refinement processes, but it doesn't necessarily have to. You'll notice too that these are all naturally occurring things for the most part. Fibers, of course, has been expanded to include synthetics and man-made fibers because they operate really similarly to the natural ones. But you know, historically, most fibers are going to be either plant or animal based. You know, flax and linen, that kind of thing. As you know, or you can shear your sheep and get your wool that way. But those things frequently go through a process: washing, carding, spinning, to be turned into something else that then becomes useful, right? So there's this manipulation process. But it doesn't have to be too serious in terms of like degree of change that goes on from the original form to its usable form. Wood, on the other hand, we take wood, we cut it down, we cut it apart, and we let it dry, and then we use it. There's very, very little shift that happens from its form as a living thing to its usable form as a material. This is the point I'm getting to right here, is that because there's this very small shift from the one thing to the next, that's why wood moves. It hasn't been changed that much. The inherent character of the material is still there. So understanding that wood moves, get it tattooed on the backs of your eyeballs there. So be like, wood moves, yes, this is the thing, wood moves. Wood is still so close to its tree form that it's going to continue to act like a tree, even after it's been cut down and its moisture content reduced. So, it's one of the reasons I really like working with it though, and that's because you're working with it. It's a cooperative effort. It's not you imposing your will on this material and then saying, do what I want, or, you know, suffer the consequences. It's you working in a collaboration with it in order to make the thing that you want to make. And that's kind of a beautiful thing, I think. So, questions about this before I erase it completely? Cool. All right. So, wood as we know it. Wood as we know it, of course, the stuff that we're using. Let's talk about the stuff that we're going to use in this class to begin with. I'm going to use a couple of terms throughout the semester that you should understand the distinction of. There is solid wood, and then there is composite materials. For the most part, if I'm talking about something that is solid wood, I'm talking about something that is like the tree all the way throughout, that has not been manipulated to the point where it could be sold as another product.